Hey guys, welcome to this week's edition of the Worship Note, where we talk all things worship. I'm Tony.
And I'm Joel.
And this is your note for the week. Joel, yesterday at the 714, we were talking through Matthew chapter 6, where we were talking about how Jesus was telling his disciples the why behind the things that you do are so important.
Yeah.
So when you pray, do it like this and not like this. When you fast, do it not to be seen, but do it so that your Father can see you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just going to share this verse real quick, kind of open things up. Matthew chapter 6, verse 1 says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven." And so, that's a pretty weighty statement by Jesus. But I don't know if you want to speak to that.
So I just think, back in their day, these religious leaders were held to such a high standard that they were almost separate from the people. And Jesus is saying, listen, I care infinitely more about what's inside than what is on the outside. And he kind of refers to these Pharisees as whitewashed tombs, but with dead man's bones inside. Mm-hmm. And so many times, sometimes in worship, we can perceive a worship atmosphere as people are into it and they're really exuberant, and so the worship must be good. But that's not always the case. Sometimes mm-hmm. we need to understand that worship is an internal reality and not necessarily an external response. And sometimes that response is valid. Like sometimes, when you really just feeling the Lord in a worship set and people are lifting hands and it's an indication that God is moving on people's hearts. But we need to be also very careful that we're putting that on, that we're actually connecting with the Lord more than what we're connecting with the music. Yeah. And so that's kind of the balance that we have to strike there.
Yeah, I think there's so much validity in that. God is so real, Holy Spirit is so real in our moments of worship, and when those times are genuine and there is a response of raising your hands, or maybe it's being down on your knees or whatever it is, those moments are so powerful. Yeah. Sometimes the danger in what we see in some places is that someone will want to replicate that and try to replicate it by doing the response as opposed to letting it genuinely and just naturally come.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where that's at. So we love to encourage everybody to raise your hands, but let it be real. Like right. we always tell our teams, like we don't gauge our worship experiences with our church on how many hands are raised or how loud we feel like everybody's singing out, or how there's some services where it's like, man, it didn't feel like right. those songs connected like at all, and then afterward you have somebody come up and they're just like, oh, that was so powerful and amazing. So yeah,
I think there's value in when Jesus called like people out of where they were at, whether it was Matthew out of the tax collector's booth and he had to initially take that step, or Peter out of the boat. Mm-hmm. And so there is a step where when we're in that worship that, Lord, I'm going to humble myself, and I'm not going to care what people are, looking around and seeing me do this. I'm going to maybe raise my hands, or maybe it's sing or clap or whatever it is for you, that step. Mm-hmm. And there definitely is that humbling of oneself and saying, Lord, I'm going to meet you. I'm going to meet you here. Would you meet me here? And in that action. But there's also that, like you said, trying to maybe replicate a past experience, and or maybe trying to I'm known as the worshiper, or I'm known as this, right. And so I need to put it on. And I think what Jesus is saying is like, I infinitely care more about what's going on in that heart connect on the inside than what is going on in your worship right now. And mm-hmm. so the song that we're going to sing is going to be an opener for this weekend. Yeah. It kind of just speaks to that. So
yeah, the song's a fun song, but the truths that are in it are right. like super harsh.
Yeah.
So it just to share some of the lyrics, and you'll hear them here in a second, but you can 3 chords in a melody won't leave you a living legacy. Yeah. So that speaks more like maybe to musicians or whatever. Yeah. But if you don't know the musicality behind a lot of worship, there's a lot of them. 3 chords and a melody, and boom, yeah, you got a worship song. And 4 songs in a parable. That's speaking to a weekend service. Yeah. Not to say that we're doing anything wrong. It's the heart behind why we do what we do. Absolutely. So 3 or 4 songs we might do for worship, and then a message. Some of these hard truths that are in there. 4 songs in a parable might leave you something terrible right. if your heart's not in it. Yeah. $5 in an offering won't buy you some prosperity.
Right.
A 6 cents of morality won't get you out of your depravity. Like the genuineness, it just hammers home how important the why is behind what we do
Absolutely.
in our worship. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. We
Thank you.
appreciate you joining in, and hope you guys enjoy this next song and stick around for the 7:14 this morning. All right. Thanks guys.
Just 3 chords in a melody won't leave you a living legacy without Jesus. Oh. Just 4 songs and a parable might leave you something terrible. Just $5 in an offering won't buy you some prosperity. Just a 6 cents of morality won't get you out of your depravity without Jesus. Oh, without Jesus. You can memorize, become a Mennonite. You can speak in tongues and raise the dead to life. Or you can build a big church, call it ministry, and teach them all they need to know to run a family. Or you can sell it all, be burned at the stake. But what in the world have you to ever gain without Jesus? Oh, without Jesus. Of a crown on the brow of a man from Nazareth. And if all I get is what Jesus did and said and put